Welcome to the Angel Wing LLC. This is Dr. Elizabeth Berman today with us, who will be talking to us about her perspectives on love and related ideas. We have been continuing our dialogues on the topic of love every week. And as a follow-up on that, there are some questions that I will be posing to Dr. Berman, who is a licensed psychologist in Wilmington, Delaware, USA. Dr. Berman, welcome to today's program, and we will be placing this as a podcast as well as an audio recording later on in the future. So first of all, my first question to you is regarding the fact that love, it's a word that we use in the English language that is referring to a neuropsychological process. We know that if there's damage done to the brain, or there is some type of trauma or abuse or those kinds of difficulties, damage done to the brain and or the mind damages love or the expression of it. What would you want to say about love and the neuropsychology of it? And then we can kind of take it from there. So
the topic of love, or even just looking at the word love, is enormous. And one of the reasons that it's worth examining what we mean when we use the word, because the word is ubiquitous in the English language, or at least American English language and the American culture. One of the ways that I just want to point out how we're influenced by the use of the word love is that Madison Avenue, which is just a shorthand for the people who create incentives to buy things, to spend money on a product, have almost co-opted the use of the word love in a way that tells us through our eyes, through our ears, what we see and what we hear, that if we buy this product, then we will be lovable. If we look in this way, which can be created by buying this product, we then will be lovable. So there's a great deal of influence in our culture around the word love that's externally oriented. And which means I am not lovable in and of myself. This is the subtle meaning of, or the subliminal message, that I am not lovable in and of myself. I must go out and purchase these other products and or use them in a way that changes who I am. Perhaps it makes me skinnier. Perhaps it makes me look flashier, or perhaps when I get out of this particular car, people are going to want to be with me because I'm more lovable if I drive this kind of car or wear these kinds of clothes. So it's a word that has many very subtle and often unconscious meanings associated to them. And the power of our unconscious needs to be noted, because it's running in the background, subliminally underneath this conscious awareness. I'm not totally able to look at what's going on in my nervous system based on how my nervous system has been programmed by the people and the culture around me. So it's a wonderful topic of conversation, and it's so valuable to begin and engage in the process of, if I am going to use this word, can I be clear, at least within myself? What is it I mean by this word? And so, in the language that I'm familiar and at ease with, what is the energy of love? If I can get down to a basic questioning of myself in terms of when I say this word, what is it that I'm pointing towards? What is it that I'm calling up? What is it that I'm feeling that has evoked the need to use this word?
Yes.
Or
Well, yes.
go ahead.
So as a follow-up on that, thank you for that very nice intro. The thing that flashed into my mind as you were speaking was the relationship between love, or what we consider to be love in any of these contexts, and its relationship to self-esteem, self-worth, self-image. That as you were talking about brand love, it's the attachment to a particular brand or clothing or perfumes, or the external aspects, and then how they relate to the sense of me, self-esteem, how I view myself, um, and then of course the energy flow within that. So I don't know if you want to go into that further.
Well, this is perhaps the meat of the topic, because if we can understand, if we can be motivated enough to explore what does it feel like when I feel myself experiencing love. So that means I have to be looking within my own self instead of outside. Now, I can follow that up with, well, what has happened to trigger or elicit that response in me? But examining what happens within myself when I use the word love is very, very powerful. And I think perhaps the first parameter around that is this because I feel somebody else is loving me, and therefore I have this experience within myself that I call love? Or is this because I'm able to look at my own self in this moment exactly as I am with love, not having lost 12 pounds or not having had a haircut after a year of being in quarantine, not with any sort of idealized image of myself having been carried out, but in this moment right now.
So okay, so I have a question. So to do that in the moment, to love oneself, the body, whatever is happening with the body and the mind, it almost sounds like a radical acceptance of what
Yes,
is.
yes, yes. A radical acceptance that can only come when we have the intention to be totally present and focus our attention on ourselves in this moment, ourself, which brings up the whole other issue. Who is the self? What is the self?
Or
How do I know myself?
so before we go into that, I just have just to back up just for a moment. When a person begins to look at themselves and they don't like what they see, that's just that's what happens in many cases. They don't like the weight they have, or the body image, or whatever. They don't like many things about themselves, maybe something that they've done before or whatever. They don't like what they see. Hence the self-image, self-esteem is very low. Now, what you're saying, if I heard you correctly, is to come out of that kind of negativity and just be present to what is. Could you elaborate on that if I heard you right?
Correct. The let's just say the research ground, the ground of observation here, or the field of observation here is not outside of me, some imagined future when um, I'm more muscular, more toned, and way less, and can run faster. Whatever, fill in the blank there. But right here, right now, how do I feel about this self? And I think that that inquiry very quickly turns into an inquiry of, yes, but that's my body, right? I could feel that if I toned up my muscles, I would be healthier and feel better. That's different than I can't really love myself right now because I'm overweight and flabby.
Okay, so could you differentiate that? That seems like a really key point. Could you say that again and differentiate those 2 points?
The point is who is the self? What is the self? Who am I? Perhaps the most pervasively profound question that comes down through whatever history I'm familiar with, right? Since we started writing things down, this is one of the motivating questions for people who really want to know what's the meaning of being human? What's the meaning of life in and of itself? So you answer that question by being present in the moment and returning back to the observation of what it feels like to be in my body. But is that all of who I am? Well, the observation of the body is not the body itself. So there's a level of consciousness there. What is that consciousness about? What is that consciousness um, a part of? And what's within the consciousness? So, this discipline of being very rigorous in our not only our thinking but the way in which we're observing ourselves, so that we come to deeper and deeper experiences of what is, who am I, and if I don't know who am I, how do I know if I love myself? If I don't know who myself is or what myself is, how do I know whether I love it or not? Or am I just parroting things I've picked up from the culture and the people around me who say a lovable person does this or looks like that or whatever the criteria is to separate? Some people have it, some people don't. So this is a line of separation that leads to prejudice. It leads to all kinds of negative things, us against them.
And also mental health problems.
Uh, yeah, exactly. I don't look like the in crowd, or I don't act like the in crowd. So how could I possibly be good or lovable or any of those other things? As opposed to getting more and more diligent about what is it that, what's the difference between a body after the life force has left it, it's still intact, it's still in the hospital bed, and the body before the life force leaves it. So perhaps it's this precious, not so easily captured thing or energy that is the life force itself, that is the common denominator between among every human being that's walking on the planet, all the animals, all the trees, all of that. So to begin to allow ourselves to get in touch with the energy that animates all of these external parts of us that we perceive with our senses and can be judged good, bad, mediocre. I think I used to watch Olympic diving events, and people would hold up numbers, giving the dive a number, right? How often do we subtly or not so subtly give ourselves a 0 or a 2 or a 3 because we're judging ourselves against some imagined standard that if the life force had left the body that meets that number 10 standard, I don't want to be that. If I carried this through to its logical conclusion, I begin to realize, wow, the external part of me, I may know and want it to be different. That's something other than whether I love myself or don't love myself. I may not love flabby muscles because I haven't worked out for a year.
Right.
I'm in quarantine. I can't go to the gym, but I can still love myself, my essence that gives life to this body. So this undercurrent of consciousness that I can be in touch with is a very, very powerful experience. And I think through history, different people have talked about it as peak experience, expanded awareness, enlightenment, many, many different terms to point to this is the essence of being human, that you're capable of observing yourself observing. So what is it that's doing the observing? And this is the ground that we begin to understand. Perhaps this is love itself. The energy of life is the energy of love itself.
So that's a very interesting way of putting all this. In day-to-day experience, day-to-day activity, we are always comparing ourselves to somebody else, something else, some standard of some sort. It could be with clothing, it could be with makeup, it could be with body shape, it could be with wealth or with income status. There's a continuous comparison, and we also live in a hierarchical world. Are you suggesting that there is a way to actually break through all of that and tap into something beyond all of that, those external coverings, and beyond the conditioning of the society?
Yes, I am. And it's the difference between interesting. It's the difference between difference and sameness.
Yeah.
What is the same about me and that model I'm judging that I'm not as pretty as?
Yeah.
It's the life force, right? And that was in the model from the moment they were born until the moment their energy exits their physical form, exactly the same way it was with me. So instead of the judgment of some people are better than others because they look different, they have different education, they have more money and power, they may have a life that we would like to have, but intrinsically, the judgment that they're better than me on some level is arbitrary because it's being based on these external factors. And when we start judging ourselves on external factors that we have no control over, it's a very fast spiral downward.
So what you're saying, if I hear you correctly, is one of the biggest problems in self-development or towards higher development, self-mastery, etc. We are judging ourselves in relation to others, putting ourselves down because we see somebody superior, somebody greater, somebody more athletic or more beautiful or more well off or whatever. Because of those comparisons are held within our system. And by holding those comparisons, we are somehow changing our energy within. Is that something like that you're trying to say?
Yes. And the thing is we not only judge ourselves against people we think are better than us,
Yes.
because we're in that difference, what's different state of mind, we judge ourselves as better than somebody who's
Yeah.
different than me. So in this hierarchical system, we're looking at differences,
Yes.
and that leads not only to hurtful judgments about ourselves, as well as hurtful judgments about people that are different from me and have less than this quality that I wish I had, that some other people have.
And that's a very powerful phrase. The hurtful judgments are, at least as I'm hearing this, seem to me that they are quite antithetical to what is love, or they have really even no relationship to love. That's what it seems like to me. Would you want to say something about that?
Yes, I think that's true. So when you look at empathy, right, it shows up in 2-year-olds across the planet, culture, language. It doesn't matter. By 2 years old, toddlers um, demonstrate empathy. If they see another little toddler struggling with something, they tend to go over and offer some assistance that doesn't benefit themselves. So what the neurologists have said is that's because of the neurons in our brain, which are fully developed and functioning by age 2. You and interesting. So that's basically a built-in potential in the human being. However, if you go back when kids are in middle school to those same kids, it varies radically by culture. In Kenya, the middle school kids are still being 100% altruistic, right? Or 100% of the kids. In America, less than 8% of the children in middle school. So the culture has moved in, and we're looking around and saying, oh, that's different, that's different. And the culture is telling us, well, that difference is good, but this difference is bad. And we begin then to internalize, how do I measure up to this scale of good and bad? And we start thinking about ourselves in those ways. And how can I love myself if I'm always on a scale someplace that I'm judging by external qualities?
So, are you suggesting, or are you recommending some approach for us to see ourselves as we are, even though we're aware of the external scales and judgments and all such things? I mean, if I put myself on a weight scale, I can see my weight and I can see a change and whatnot. I mean, I'm even judging myself in that. Even though we're in the in the judgment process, because there are judgments that we make, are you saying that it is possible to be um, free of a judgment zone completely?
Well, it's possible to learn to recognize what the energy of judgment feels like in me, right? I have a body,
Yeah.
I have thoughts, I have emotions. I can feel into those feels of myself, albeit it takes determination and training to stay, especially with the more negative or the judgments, right? That typically are negative, to stay there with them, because we run away from discomfort and we run towards comfort, forgetting that discomfort only has meaning because there's something we call comfort.
Yes.
So there's a continuum of something, and we're picking out a point on that continuum and saying, this is bad and this is good.
Right.
And we know, because we live in a world of duality, that's what gives things meaning, is there is an opposite to them. If all we ever felt was comfort, we would have no idea what comfort was. It would just be, right? But because there's discomfort, we can always be grasping for more comfort. So it's the training to be able to be present, consciously present to an energy of judgment and saying, wow, this is what judgment feels like in my body. This is what judgment sounds like in my words, my internal words. And can I recognize it as judgment instead of identifying myself as a judgmental person? I can be a being who's aware of the energy of judgment that just comes in. If I don't react to it, build a story and drama around it, that energy moves through us very fast. Maybe we learn something, maybe we don't, but we don't have to hold on to it and identify with it,
It
because
almost,
we judge ourselves for being judgmental, for
it
being.
sounds like, but yes, so it sounds like what you're saying, once the energy flows inside judgment, unless we can capture it moving into that zone of judgment right away, it will go in there and it will strengthen the pre-existing pattern that's in our mind already, and it will further strengthen the neurological connection also.
Yes, very well said. Yes, yes. And we are, our nervous system is connected with our senses, and our brain processing the information from the senses carried through the nervous system. And so in some ways, we are a slave to the neural networks that we have in ourselves until we recognize that as humans, we can become aware of being aware. And we can then recognize different energies as they come through us and identify not with the energy, but identify, oh, that's love. Oh, that's compassion. Oh, that's judgment. And to allow ourselves not to reinforce the neural networks that create those responses to an experience of the world, and give us the space to look at what's going on, to love and respect ourselves enough while it's going on, to choose what we're going to do instead of just going into an automatic neural loop that just says, oh, I'm so fat, look at that girl and that jogging outfit, oh my God, what's wrong with me? And that whole negative spiral. If we can recognize, oh, there it is, judgment again, whether it's self-judgment or judgment of the other. And if it gets really hard to not get drawn into it, we can do something as simple as just putting our hands on our heart and saying, this is a really challenging experience. This is a hurtful experience. May I be kind to myself while this energy is moving through me, and offer ourselves kindness. Maybe we aren't audacious enough to say, may I love myself, even though this energy of judgment is here. But we can start with kindness and move into love.
Okay, so to follow up on this, the word love, as we started out with today, and as we have been continuing in our dialogues, it is referring to something, some neurological pattern, neuropsychological processes, maybe something spiritual, energy, so many ways of talking about it. As a psychologist, would you put love as one of the emotions, that it is an emotional state? Or are you saying, or in addition to that, are you also saying that there is that the word love is also referring to like an undifferentiated energy? This is the second possibility. And third thing that would be that even that undifferentiated energy is coming from some metaphysical transcendental dimension. So there's the psychological, then there's the energetic, and then potentially something that is transcendental or metaphysical. Could you talk about these?
Yeah, the first thing I would like to say is it's somewhere along the line, somebody told me that Eskimos have something like 112, and I'm just reaching at a number now, words for snow.
Right.
We basically have snow, maybe fresh fallen snow and dirty snow, right? So, all right. So, this allows me to be able to say, okay, when you live in a place, in a culture that values something, there are many fine discernments about different elements or aspects of that, right? Snow, for an example. I think the Greeks had many words for love
Sure.
because they recognize that we use or they use the word love in many different ways and many different instances. For me, a very, very basic and critical distinction is there's perhaps what we would call natural. And if we wanted to go to your third level, we could call divine love,
Yeah.
which would be for me the energy of life it's unfolding itself versus human love, which by its nature is conditional, right?
Right.
I if you loved me, you would know what kind of flowers I like. Well, to begin with, that's stupid. Most of us aren't mind readers, but we have these conditions in our relationship, and we use those conditions, whether we've examined them or not, to say, oh, you're not very loving, or oh, you were really unloving in that situation, or we judge ourselves as being lovable or incapable of loving based on these human dynamics, which are complex because much of them is unconscious, much of it's unconscious, and we really don't have a way, at least in the past so much in our culture, to examine what is love for me. I've made all these assumptions and they're rumbling around in my subconscious mind and making me judge whether my partner is being loving or not in any single situation. And that's very much the human love, right? Which is conditional.
All right. So I have a question about that. When we're using this expression, human love, we have obviously human experience. We are in the human body, human frame. We experience these polarities we were talking about before, the swinging back and forth, and the different gradations of these emotions. The human experience is what most people are just aware of that. Angel Wing is trying to unravel that and then go further from that stage. So in your exposition so far, if I heard you correctly, there have been these intimations or these specific points you've talked about where there are these openings into something beyond just our usual swinging back and forth in the emotional realm. So when a person is looking at themselves, sometimes they like themselves, they don't like themselves, they like someone else, they don't like someone else. These are the pairs of opposites. You were just talking about some minutes back, that to experience even something like gratitude, there has to be something that is not gratitude. There has to be, otherwise we cannot experience that. So those polar opposites, or that continuum, is that continuum psychological at the human level? That's my first question. Second question is, if it is at that level, then what is the jump beyond that?
So I would offer that um, the continuum or the opposites,
Yeah.
right? I
Yes.
would offer that energy flows in a continuum. And so we can talk about love, perhaps at the most expansive point of that, and hate maybe would be a word for the most contracted part of that
Yes.
particular continuum,
Yes.
right? Judgment, totally accepting at one end of the continuum, judgmental about everything. Nothing's good enough
Right.
at the other end. So if we look at the continuum, we begin to see that opposites aren't nearly as opposite as they appear when we're not thinking about things clearly. When the emotional energy sweeps us into a place where we're feeling being judged, or that was a hateful look he gave me, or that was a mean nasty thing to have done to me. um, we're allowing ourselves to identify with and get swept up in the emotional component of the experience, and not recognizing that there's an energy that's moving through us. I don't have to be angry, an angry person, or even angry at this moment. I can recognize, whoa, there's a strong anger energy in my body, in my thoughts, in my emotions. Like in anger, I tend to get contracted and pulled in on myself and defensive around the situation, as opposed to just recognizing the energy, because then the energy doesn't drive my response. I can look at the energy and choose what I'm going to do with it.
So what you're saying is that it is possible to almost choose what emotion we want to have.
Well, yeah, I think we need to have some skill about choosing, or about recognizing emotions that come through us.
Right.
And as we develop that skill, then we learn, okay, I can choose what to do about this. Do I want to do something that's going to give me more of that experience? Or
Yeah.
do I want to choose something that's going to take me to a different experience?
That's
Which is
correct.
exactly what you said.
Yes. So we do have that choice of placing our power in a certain direction to either expand that experience, whether it's an anger experience or a compassion experience or a gratitude experience, whatever it is. Can you elaborate on that choice process? I think it's a very foreign concept to a lot of people, that they can actually choose to place their energy within a particular emotion or particular experience and expand it. Or they don't even know that they're doing that. I mean, it's a very, very interesting thing. Yes, certainly.
Yeah. So I would say that I would use the, how do I want to say? I would use the term the energy. We experience energy when we recognize it for what it is at its most essential form, which is an energy, right? A thought, mental energy, our thoughts, emotional energy, feeling energies. If I have pain in my right knee, right, that's an energy, and I'm feeling it in my body. So the experience comes to us, and what we do with that experience gives us more or less power in our lives.
So,
So if the energy comes in
yeah.
and I completely allow myself to be drawn into it, I'm now angry. I am angry, right? Well, no, I have the opportunity to say, I am aware of the energy of anger or angry energy in my field. And in separating myself from the energy, I'm either thinking or feeling or emoting, I then begin to have, I'm the consciousness that holds the awareness. The energy is going to come and go. That's what energy does. Consciousness, my consciousness is the most powerful thing I have. And it allows me not to get sucked into the whirlpool of strong emotions, strong. And when we have very strong thoughts, they're almost 100% accompanied by very strong emotion. So then it's a cocktail of energy that we can get swept up into. It's almost like a tornado in some ways. You know, we lose ourselves in the energy.
And that's the real trap of humanity, where most of humanity is stuck right there.
Yes, yes, because then whatever it was that triggered that emotion in us, right? The emotion, the thought, the feeling, that's in me, right?
Exactly.
That's not out there in the world,
Mhm.
but I can blame that dangerous, hostile driver who's driving 3 times the speed limit and cutting people off, right? And give all my energy away to all the thoughts I have about what a jerk that person is, how dangerous that person is. When I can observe it, observe the fear that it created to me, in me, when he, you know, almost drove me off the road, cutting in during traffic. Um, and I lose my ability to bring my full consciousness to how to maintain safe driving in my car with this guy weaving in and out of traffic around me.
So as I'm listening to you, I'm trying to listen very carefully to what you're saying. The thing that comes to my mind is that there is a natural integration occurring.
Yes.
All these broken pieces within us, they begin to come together. And
Yeah.
so in the integration, there is also expansion of energy. So integration is not collapsing energy; it's expanding energy, but it's coalescing. It's interconnecting. This is what this all sounds like to me.
Yes. Yes. And this brings us back to, I think, one of the very first things you talked about was self-esteem.
Yeah.
Can I love myself? And my answer to that is absolutely yes. And perhaps that's the most important lesson in a human life, is to love. The love on the level of the life force itself, the acceptance and the gratitude and the um, gentle compassion that we can have for ourselves as we go through a world which has good and bad in it, which has up and down in it, which has energies that have two levels of continuum, and a culture that says one part of that continuum is good, the other part is bad. Right. So there's this separation then of, where am I? Am I a good one or am I a bad one? Right. In
Almost
this
like
domain.
it sounds like one has to discover who they are. But,
Yeah.
but before they do that, there is a discovery of the conditioning, programming, cultural
Yeah.
influence,
Yeah.
all of those layers that we are embedded with. We are engulfed with that almost. It's almost like an engulfing. We're engulfed with that.
It's like, does the fish know what water is?
Yes, there's a fish know what water is, right? Exactly.
Right. Or another analogy has been, it's like a lens over our consciousness. I would say just our eyes, right? If somehow or another I was born with a defective lens, right, in my eye, and I didn't see blue or something, right? I wouldn't know that unless somebody put a corrected lens on my eye, and I could, oh my gosh, right? I have this discernment now that I didn't have before. So when we're young, we're all born, all mammals are born young and helpless, warm-blooded and helpless, right? And so we give but naturally we want to stay alive, and instinctively, even though we don't have the neural networks for the abstraction of this, but we instinctively know that we have to please the caregivers in order to survive. And so we take what we're told as a reflection of reality without understanding there are all these layers of value judgment and misunderstanding. And maybe with the best of intentions, my mother teaches me what her mother taught her and her mother taught her. And I was raised in a paradigm that's probably 150 years old. We don't live in a world that existed 150, 200 years ago. So there's no like bad parents or bad culture. There's this ability to get down to the core of what does it mean to have a human experience. And that's where our power lies. Everything else is external to us, and we don't have a lot of power over the external.
So
We
this has been really, really interesting. I just have one more request here for before we close our conversation. What um, practical method or approach would you recommend to those who are listening to this recording, or to our dialogue here, and or to this question and answer session? Practically, what does one do? I mean, okay, so what does one do to become aware of the cultural conditioning? Is there a meditation? Is there something you would recommend? Or you could even do it now if you'd like, just show them some steps.
I would just I would recommend that people ask themselves the question, do I want to have more power or agency in my life? Would I like to increase the areas in my life where I can make choices that have significant differences, that make differences in my life?
So that's one question that an individual can ask. Okay, so if they ask the question, what do they do next after that?
Then I encourage people to challenge themselves to experience their own mind more directly than we generally experience it. And I would say that any one of the mindful techniques, there are a myriad of them out there now, but to use something as an anchor, if you're comfortable with your breath, to just allow yourself with the intention to just simply follow your breath. You can start with 5 breaths. Can you get through 5 breaths before a thought or a feeling distracts you? And you simply allow yourself time every day, just like you would brush your teeth before you go out into the world, or you put clothes on before you open the front door and walk out, that you allow yourself a few moments every day in which you train your mind to focus on one thing. Your breath is the easiest. And as you do that, you will begin to have some appreciation for how the human mind works and what it's doing all the time, and how much of that you're totally unaware of. Not you, me, all of us. It's the human condition. And as you begin to see what the mind is doing, then you begin to have a discernment or discipline that allows you to say, oh, wow, the emotions are kind of supporting that, because the mind, body, and brain all work together to try and create some sort of parallel support of whatever's going on. And in that, you begin to recognize, I have choice here. I have choice where I'm going to put my attention, because once you give yourself permission to create some space in your day and some discipline in your own awareness to just see where the mind, what the human mind does. It's often called the monkey mind. If you ever looked at monkeys, they're moving a lot, doing a lot of things all the time, not a whole lot of reflection in there. But that's a beautiful start, because from there, you begin to know who you are, and you can't help but love yourself. You've done so much good. You've come through so many challenges and hardships in a lifetime. You begin to see why you would love yourself.
It's almost as if a space mentally opens up where the clutter begins to dissipate. And just the pure state of awareness, consciousness, pure emotion, divine love or godly love or whatever language anybody wants to say, something special comes about there.
Yes, I think we have these nanoseconds perhaps in the beginning of awareness of, this is amazing. When I can focus, my awareness is such a gift. It opens up so many possibilities for me to discern what things are, what's really happening to me, instead of just being, a fish in water, the water being all the emotions and all the thoughts that are surrounding me, all coming from inside, outside, all around, right? And we begin to see, perhaps, if a fish, I don't know what it's like to be a fish consciousness, but a fish out of water all of a sudden knows it's not the same, right?
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, that was Dr. Elizabeth Berman. Thank you very much for such an enlightening conversation in answering these questions. Uh, please look forward to many more audios, videos, and meditations from Dr. Elizabeth Berman, one of our key presenters from the Angel Wing program. Thank you, Dr. Berman.
Okay, so that was good.